In this module of the course, we will study the self-reference criteria and ethnocentrism. It is critical to understand these as they may have effects on international business. After studying this module, you shall be able to describe the instinctive nature of self-reference criteria, explain the concept and nature of ethnocentrism, illustrate an understanding of self-reference criteria in different cultures, discuss the effects of self-reference criteria on decision making, examine reasons for considering these as major obstacles in international business decisions, isolate self-reference criteria effects when entering into international markets, analyze the significance of study of these parameters in international business. The world is very big and complex. International business includes people from different cultures and is subject to cultural challenges. Generally, we all view and interpret the world around us through a culture filter to some degree. The number of companies operating internationally is growing constantly, and companies should not neglect the cultural and institutional differences. With increasing globalization, firms face many challenges in securing their business interest in other countries. Firms which want to be a step ahead of their competitors need to be aware of the importance of the home country factors. The SRC is a means of operationalizing cultural analysis and business decision making. The concept of self-reference criteria SRC has become an important aspect in international business, and knowing the factors in terms of the foreign culture traits, habits and norms are difficult. Despite such differences, the SRC approach gives useful guidelines on the extent of the need of standardization or adaptation in international business. Now, we will discuss upon the concept of self-reference criteria and ethnocentrism. It is a common tendency amongst most people to use their own culture while they do and think about something. People don't go into any deliberate thinking, and it is their unconscious tendency to use their own national culture while thinking, doing and working to handle a problem or situation. This instinct of people works automatically. James Lee in 1966 referred the situation of people's unconscious attempts to compare others' culture through their own national cultural eyes as the self-reference criteria. Self-reference criteria is the unconscious reference to one's own cultural values in comparison to other cultures, experiences and knowledge as a basis for decisions. A person's own culture conditions how he or she reacts to different values, behavior or system. Most people unconsciously assume that people in other cultures experience the world as they do. They view their own culture as the norm. Everything else may seem strange. That is to say that one's own culture or company knows the best how to do things. It also refers to the assumption that what is suitable for domestic market will be suitable for foreign markets too. That is to say, there is no need to test whether the product or service has to be changed. Understanding the self-reference criteria is a crucial first step to avoiding cultural bias and ethnocentric reactions. In general, people tend to react on the basis of the knowledge that they have already acquired and naturally think instinctively. Therefore, when faced problem or situation in another culture, the tendency is to react to instinctively and refer to one's SRC for a solution. However, this reaction is based on meanings, values, symbols, norms and behavior relevant to one's own culture rather than rational thinking. As a result, such decisions and reactions are often not good ones. Next is the concept and nature of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a belief in the superiority of one's own ethnic group or culture. The word ethno comes from Greek and refers to a people, nation or cultural grouping, while centric comes from Latin and refers of course to the center. The term ethnocentrism then refers to the tendency for each society to place its own culture patterns at the center of things. Ethnocentrism is the practice of comparing other cultural practices with those of one's own and automatically finding those other cultural practices to be inferior. It is the habit of each group taking for granted the superiority of its culture. It makes a culture into a yardstick with which to measure all other cultures as good or bad, high or low, right or poor in proportion as they resemble ours. Ethnocentrism is a universal human reaction found in all known societies, in all groups and in practically all individuals. Everyone learns ethnocentrism while growing up. Ethnocentrism denotes the inflexible approach of relating to the world only in terms of our own culture. Hand in hand with ethnocentrism goes a disregard or contempt for the culture of other countries. Charles W.L. Hill is of the view that ethnocentrism is all too prevalent. Many Americans are guilty of it, as are many French people, British people and so on. Ugly as it is, ethnocentrism is a fact of life, one that international business must be on guard against. John D. Daniels et al. Have pointed out that ethnocentrism isn't necessarily an inappropriate way of looking at things. Next is the nature of ethnocentrism. Mike W. Peng has emphasized that the self-centered mentality is known as ethnocentrism. For example, many Americans believe in American exceptionalism. That is, the United States is exceptionally well endowed to lead the world. The Chinese call China Zhuangguo, which literally means the country in the middle or Middle Kingdom. Asian Scandinavians call their country by a similar name, Midgard. Some modern Scandinavians, such as some Danes, believe in their freedom to publish whatever they please. In other words, common sense in one society may become uncommon elsewhere. Ethnocentrism is the tendency to view domestically produced goods as superior to those produced in other countries. Some people believe it inappropriate and possibly even immoral to buy products from other countries. In Japan and the United States, for example, buying foreign goods may be seen as unpatriotic or causing job losses. In contrast to consumer ethnocentrism, Zincota and Ron Canyon have pointed out about world-mindedness, which refers to a consumer's interest in and openness to acquiring goods from other countries. This leads to the emergence of a global consumer culture. The more consumers are exposed to products, services and ideas from abroad, the more likely they may to adopt world-minded tendencies. A cosmopolitan is someone who maintains a network of links and personal contracts with those outside the immediate community and is willing to venture into other cultures. Cosmopolitans are especially attractive targets for multinational corporations, that is MNCs, launching new products. Firms may develop advertising that incorporates foreign and global cultural positioning to appeal to world-minded consumers. For example, both Apple and BMW benefit enormously from consumer perceptions of these firms as offering global worldly brands. Now we will discuss upon the problems of ethnocentric orientation. Ethnocentric orientation is based on the view that if product and business strategy are successful in the home country, the same would also work in the host country. However, in international business, the important thing to always have in mind is that the foreign culture is not as we are used to at home. One of the primary causes of cultural related problems which managers unconsciously hold is related to the ethnocentric assumption. Problems arise when managers presume that foreigners think and behave just like the people back at home. The problems of ethnocentric assumption are poor business strategies in both planning and execution, distorts communications with foreigners. Managers new to international business often find the behavior of a foreigner hard to explain. They may perceive the other's behavior as odd and perhaps improper. For example, it is easy to be offended when the foreign counterpart does not appreciate our food, history, sports or entertainment or is otherwise inconsiderate. This situation may interface with the manager's ability to interact effectively with the foreigner, even leading to communication breakdown. This example illustrates cultural bias which proves to be a significant obstacle to successful interpersonal communication. Not adapting a product to a particular market's special needs, filling key positions in overseas units with national managers who have done well in the home markets while overlooking local managers who have performed well. Ethnocentric view need to be avoided while going for international business. The marketer will fail to do business in other country if he or she don't take others' culture seriously. One way of doing this is by understanding the elements of others' culture. Successful international business relationships depend in large measure on developing a polycentric approach in situations where cross-cultural issues arise, such as joint ventures. Polycentrism is the approach of attempting to overcome one's own cultural assumptions and develop an openness and understanding of other cultures. Now, some illustrations of self-reference criterion in different cultures. There are numerous instances to demonstrate some upshots of SRC. Such instances point to misunderstandings or conflicts that have happened between people of different cultures due to differences in the meaning of time and attitudes towards the other people in different culture. This can be explained with the help of an example where people from different cultural orientation meet. In a meeting or conference, physical distance between individuals become an important aspect of SRC. Americans do not like to sit very close and it becomes very uncomfortable for them. Given this situation, when someone from other culture approaches an American too closely, American reacts adversely and tries to keep the distance. Herein lies the difficulty, as this results in confusion for both parties because both sides react according to their values of SRC, making both victims of cultural misunderstanding. For the company which is involved in international business, it is necessary for it to understand the culture and the subculture of the concerned foreign country. The subculture should take under consideration while doing segmentation. Next is the effects of self-reference criterion on decision making. In international business, it is very important to be careful about SRC in decision making. The effect of operating in the foreign market will not be the same as in the domestic market. Companies may face some barriers and the barrier must be overcome efficiently. The paramount need is that the company must always be ready to adapt the adjustment without loss of time and space. Since in international business we are working in different cultural environments and have a self-reference behavior may not be the correct behavior from the perspective target culture. As such, it is important to realize the differences between various cultures. The option of self-reference criterion is not important in international business. The foreign company must obey some rules and adapt cultural impression of the host country. Some international rules and regulation must be followed strictly to enter international market. To launch a business in foreign country, some basic features of host country are to be observed. Not only does culture condition wants and need, but it also impacts on the way messages concerning the ability of the product or service to satisfy the needs and wants are received and interpreted as cultures differ markedly from one international market to another. Culture encompasses all aspects of the marketing in terms of product, pricing, promotion and distribution. However, it would be important to keep in mind that the suitability of all these aspects will depend on the specific context of the culture that the companies are targeting. Now we will discuss upon the major obstacles in international business decisions. Understanding and dealing with the self-reference criterion are two of the more important facets in international business, as SRC creates an obstacle to international business decision making, particularly for a new firm. SRC and ethnocentrism taken together blurs the ability to assess a foreign market in right perspective, which leads to the point of serious mistakes and consequences. For example, the case of Disneyland proved that how SRC can also make all efforts worthless if appropriate actions are not taken. When they have opened their business in France, they faced a tremendous problem and lost billions of dollars. This was big mistake made by Disneyland, stemming from reliance on their SRC in making decision. An important point for the success of international business is to take into account the environmental differences from one country to another. It is the general perception that in decision making, SRC becomes an obstacle to assess correctly a foreign market in its true light. This is due to the tendency to react instinctively and refer to one's SRC for a solution. Such sort of decision making, which is based on one's SRC, is often found to be unsuitable and out of the context. When participating in international discussion, participants react unconsciously to the values of their own SRCs, and this makes all of them victims of a cultural misunderstanding. We may refer here to the kind of misunderstandings that can occur about personal space between people of different cultures. In the United States, unrelated individuals keep a certain physical distance between themselves and others when talking or in groups. We do not consciously think about that distance, we just know what feels right without thinking. Philip R. Katoria et al. Have suggested that the most effective way to control the influence of the SRC is to recognize its existence in one's behavior. Although it is almost impossible for someone to learn every culture in depth and to be aware of every important difference, an awareness of the need to be sensitive to differences and to ask questions when doing business in another culture can avoid many of the mistakes possible in international business. It is good to remember that undetected similarities do not cause problems. However, the one difference that goes undetected can create a failure in international business. With such instinctive nature of SRC, firms may make wrong business decisions by thinking how they will handle the same situation if they were in their home country. An international business must also be constantly on guard against the dangers of ethnocentric behavior. Understanding the SRC is a crucial first step to avoid cultural bias and ethnocentric reactions. The most important aspect is to be prepared for the different culture and all that comes with it. Ethnocentrism and SRC are not helpful to inculcate understanding of the cooperation with other groups. In fact, attitudes of suspicion, disdain and hostility are likely to be engendered, and this kind of extreme ethnocentrism is likely to promote conflict. Now we will discuss upon isolating SRC effects when entering into international markets. We have already noted that perception of foreign market needs can be fruitless by our own cultural experience and knowledge. To avoid problems in international business decisions, it is necessary to make a cross-cultural analysis and isolate the impact of SRC influences. Each of us has his/her own perceptions of foreign environments. They are different, and as such each culture must be approached separately and individually. Each country is unique. Each culture necessitates a separate investigation and analysis. To the other extreme, L. William Murray in 1981 has observed that we teach worldwide business success. IBM, Exxon, Xerox, etc. produce and successfully market the world model. Evidently, they have found a way around the uniqueness biases and have developed worldwide acceptance of their products. But does Chrysler expect consumers worldwide to accept their world car? Does IBM produce only one type of computer for all markets? At what point can uniqueness and universality merge, and under what cultural conditions? One of the major difficulties one encounters is that of developing generalized principles in an area of uniqueness. One should make an attempt to isolate the influence of SRC, that is, one's unknown perceptions, preconceived judgment about foreign culture, and to diminish their effects upon one's decisions. To tackle this situation, J. A. Lee in 1966 has suggested the recognition and amelioration of the unconscious reference to one's own cultural values within business decisions. In this way, Lee wants to redefine the problem without the SRC influence and solve for the foreign market situation. In other words, Lee discussed foreignness in contrast to the apprehension and value ladenness perception each of us has when we discover that there is something different about foreigners. He calls for a step-by-step approach to one's biases about the foreign culture in an attempt to remove their biases from the final business decision. To achieve this objective, Lee's emphasis is on business adaptation, the achievement of business goals with a minimum of problems and setbacks due to the various manifestations of cultural conflict. For such an analysis, following 4-step framework has been suggested. First, define the business problem or objective in home country cultural traits, habits or norms. Second, define the business problem or objective in foreign country cultural traits, habits or norms. Make no value judgments. Third, isolate the SRC influence in the problem and examine it carefully to see how it complicates the problem. And fourth, redefine the problem without the SRC influence and solve for the optimum business objective situation. In the first step, the problem is defined on the basis of culture of home country. In the second step, problem should be defined again on the basis of culture of the country in which company wants to start operations without involving value judgments. First, control the effects of self-reference criterion on definition and analyze the problem. Then, problem is redefined without the self-reference criterion. It is worthwhile to note that this approach requires an understanding of the culture of each foreign market as well as one's own culture. Despite some problems with this suggestion, it still gives useful guidelines on the extent for the need of standardization in international business planning. Next is the significance of study of these parameters on international business. SRC is environmentally uncontrollable, the study of which is very important in understanding the nuances of international business. However, the problem is that SRC may be hidden or non-apparent. The importance to understand the effects of SRC cannot be overlooked by the business firm that wants to operate at international level. SRC influences the business in various ways. Adverse effects of SRC can be prevented and turned into benefits by being aware of cultural differences and recognizing the importance of those differences. More and more companies are now operating internationally. Rather than business being simpler, performing any kind of international business can be highly complex. The kind of obstacles the companies never faced before are becoming crucial today. Cultural collisions have become common, especially in the beginning. Cultural differences amongst countries should be remembered and recognized with respect. Those companies that will or have recognized complexity of operating in a foreign market have an ample scope of developing a successful business to meet their objectives. Fortunately, some companies have realized important differences existing in global business and reacted adequately when strategic decisions had to be made regarding their operation in foreign markets. In this context, it would be rewarding to remember that mistakes can be difficult to correct and disrespect for the foreign culture can destroy the entire operation. As such, companies involved in international business should be careful to handle these difficulties in a way that fulfills the expectations of foreign business partners. The self-reference criterion SRC means the tendency to view, often unconsciously, to use the standards of one's own culture to evaluate others. SRC is a means of operationalizing cultural analysis and business decision making. It is an interesting and effective tool to explain the importance of culture in international business. The SRC often creates problems while entering into a new foreign market. Adverse effects of SRC can be prevented and turned into benefits by being aware of cultural differences and recognizing the importance of those differences. The SRC utilizes a step-by-step analysis of one's biases about the foreign culture in an attempt to remove their bias from the final business decision. James Lee provided an approach of 4 stages in order to mitigate the biases raised by SRC, especially in international marketing. Most ideas could appeal to most people worldwide if they are carefully marketed and are modified as necessary. One of the major difficulties one encounters in international business is that of developing generalized principles in an area of uniqueness. Each country is unique. Each culture necessitates a separate investigation and analysis. Ethnocentrism is the tendency to view one's culture to be superior to others. People who are familiar with only one cultural pattern may believe they have an awareness of cultural differences elsewhere, when in reality they do not, unless they have had occasion to make comparisons with other cultures. They are probably not even aware of the important features of their own. Ethnocentrist management overlooks national differences and ignores import factors, believes home country objectives should prevail, thinks change is easy. Positively, ethnocentrism promotes continuance of the status quo and negatively it discourages change. Ethnocentric behavior can be avoided by learning about the culture where one will be doing references.